The Starlight Barking, Chapter 12. Now that the square was cleared, Cadpig was in a hurry to get back to Downing Street, as the Prime Minister often woke in the night and would be most upset if she wasn't there. She said a loving goodbye to all her family, especially to Patch, and promised to send messages by the twilight barking. "I hope we shall soon see you on television," said Patch. "Oh, I'm sure you will, and I heard the Prime Minister say that the next time he has to be out of England, he'll send me to stay at Hell Hall. So we shall meet again very soon. How I wish you could all be with me when the Prime Minister wakes up." "We want to be with the Dearleys when they wake up," said. "Ah, the dear Dearleys," said Cadpig. But her thoughts were really with the dear Prime Minister. The dogs in Cadpig's cabinet left with her, to return to their own homes. The Staffordshire left for St. John's Wood, and the Great Dane, with Sam the Chihuahua on his back, set off for Hampstead, after arranging to keep in touch with the sheepdog and the Jack Russell. The Jack Russell had taken a great fancy to the Chihuahua because the tiny creature made him feel such a big, strong dog. The 3 lost dogs had already gone, with all the other lost dogs, to the Battersea Lost Dogs Home. All were taking this chance to get into it, knowing they would be fed, and have the chance of being adopted by kind people. Pongo assembled his party. Tommy, the cats, the sheepdog, and the Jack Russell mounted the tractor, and the Dalmatians who had brought it to London got into position for the return journey. "You and I will lead the way, missus," said Pongo. He knew that if they lined up in rows of 4, as they had, when coming from the country, she would instantly realize that Roly-Poly wasn't beside her. Now, perhaps, she wouldn't notice it. Anyway, he gave her no time to think. He told all the Dalmatians who weren't pushing the tractor to fall in behind him, and missus, and then quickly barked the command, "Quick swoosh for Suffolk." It was surprising how quickly the visiting dogs had got out of London. Already the streets were deserted except for a few dogs standing outside their own front doors. "Very different from this morning," said Pongo. "Are you glad we're on our way home, missus?" "Yes, Pongo," said Mrs. "But something's worrying me, and I can't think what it is." "Don't try to," said Pongo. "Just keep your mind on swooshing steadily." "Yes, Pongo," said Mrs. But she still sounded worried. Pongo said, "Mrs. dear, if you should suddenly remember what's worrying you, don't let that stop you swooshing, or the dogs behind will stop too, and the tractor may bump into them. Now just let's think of getting home to our good beds, and the Dearleys." "Oh, yes," said Mrs. happily. And she thought about this so hard that they had swooshed out to the suburbs before she began worrying again. If only she could find out what she was worrying about. She felt sure it must be important. Pongo noticed that her pace was slackening. "Just a little faster, Mrs. dear," he urged. "Think forward thoughts." Forward thoughts. What did that remind Mrs. of? Who was it that, this morning, had thought a backward thought? It was Roly-Poly. Where was he? That was what had been worrying her. Whoa, how could she have forgotten? She gave a quick cry, and almost stopped swooshing. But Pongo urged her on. Steadily, missus. Just keep up your pace." "Now, what is it?" she told him, finishing by saying, "We must go back." "No, missus," said Pongo firmly. "But we can't leave Roly behind." "Pongo, please stop swooshing. Let me talk to you." Pongo saw that she couldn't go on, feeling as she did, and the whole army could do with a few minutes' rest. So he barked in order to slow down, making sure that the tractor pushers understood, and called a halt. He then explained to Mrs. why he had felt they must start without Roly. "We'd no way of finding him, and I had to do what was best for us all, as I must now. At sunrise we shall lose our power to swoosh. We can't risk being stranded miles and miles from home." "But the sun won't rise for hours yet," said Mrs. "It will. Summer nights are short, and remember, Sirius warned us we must on no account turn back." "Roly will be all right, Mrs. Sooner or later George the Boxer will bring him back to Downing Street, and he'll be kindly treated, but no one will know where he belongs. He isn't wearing his collar, and Cadpig can't tell anyone he's her brother." "Perhaps she can hint it," said Pongo. Mrs. shook her head sadly. "We may never see him again, but it'd be something if I knew he was safe. Let's see if Cadpig has any news of him." Mrs. at once began barking, calling Cadpig, but the only answers she got were from nearby dogs. Pongo said, "I'm afraid we've lost our power to reach Cadpig by thought waves, and we must swoosh on." Already the night sky was paler. Pongo felt anxious. What counted as sunrise? Would they be all right until they actually saw the sun, or would they stop being able to swoosh as soon as darkness changed to gray dawn? "Just one more bark first," begged Mrs. "And please help me." "We'll all help," said Pongo, and gave the word. Every dog is to bark with Mrs., calling Cadpig, 3 times. Now, the noise was tremendous, but after the 3rd bark there was dead silence. "We've done our best, Mrs., said Pongo gently, and he warned everyone to be ready to start swooshing. "Listen," cried Mrs. Pongo listened, then said, "That's just a faint bark from some dog a mile or so away." But Mrs. was now wildly excited. "That's not just some dog. That's Roly-Poly." Again Pongo listened. The bark was like Rolly's. Were they getting through to London? "Roly, my darling," barked Mrs. "Where are you?" And now there was no mistaking the answering bark. "I'm here, mother, coming as fast as I can. Please wait for me." Then the tabby cat, on the tractor, meowed loudly, "I can see him." And a moment later Roly-Poly, swooshing at full tilt, was knocking dogs over right and left. He just managed to pull up as he reached his parents. "Where have you been?" cried Mrs. But Pongo said, "You're not to tell us until we're safely home. Just get into line between your mother and me. Now all dogs at the ready." Quick swoosh. After a few minutes Mrs. whispered to Roly, "Are you tired, Roly? Are we swooshing too fast for you?" "Oh, this is nothing after what I've done today," Roly whispered back. "No whispering," said Pongo sternly. "Save all your breath for swooshing." He was thankful that swooshing needed so little breath, but wanted to be on the safe side in case extra speed was needed. Soon they were right out of London. They knew this first by the sweet fresh smell that came from the fields. Pongo looked anxiously at the sky. It was still, he told himself, a night sky, but only just. He had seen it look like this when there was a moon behind clouds. Tonight there was no moon and he knew that, gradually but certainly, the dawn was coming. He called a halt and asked if every dog felt capable of swooshing faster. "All including the tractor pushers," said they did. "Splendid," said Pongo. "Mrs. and Roly, stop whispering. Now off we go." And he set a faster pace. At this speed they simply streaked through the countryside. Soon they were in North Essex, soon through it and into Suffolk. But the dawn was keeping pace with them. By the time they were through Sudbury the sky was no longer a night sky. "Faster," Pongo commanded, and now they went so fast that Pongo feared it might be too much for Mrs. "Are you all right?" he asked her. "Yes, Pongo," said Mrs. "But it isn't my idea of a pleasant swoosh. This morning everything was so peaceful, and so still. Now the wind's awake. I'm just a little afraid my ears may blow off." But they were still with her when at last the village nearest to Hell Hall was reached, and a halt called, so that the Jack Russell could jump from the tractor and run to his home. All the other dogs from the village were already back. Then it took only a minute to reach the farm. "Get to bed quickly, Tommy," said the sheepdog. "We must leave the tractor in the road." Tommy's father never could understand how it got there. "There isn't a minute to spare. Look at the eastern sky, Pongo." Pongo saw with dismay that there was a faint flush of pink. He was about to command, "Quick swoosh," when he realized that, though the tabby cat was safely home, the white cat wasn't and she couldn't swoosh. "You must ride on my back," he told her, but the white cat refused, though politely. "I'm quite a weight these days, with all the good food I get. I'll just walk home, and if the gates won't open for me, I can climb the wall, without any help from Sirius. So off you go." Then quickest swoosh, ordered Pongo. The pink flush in the sky was growing stronger. "Faster, faster," cried Pongo. Now he could see the walls of Hell Hall. Now he could see the gates, firmly closed. Would they open? The Dalmatians halted outside them. "Please, please, kind gates," begged Mrs. The gates swung inwards and there, waiting on the lawn, were Prince and Perdita, and all the Dalmatians who had remained at Hell Hall. "Whoa, we were so afraid you wouldn't get here in time," said Perdita. "Did you see Sirius too?" asked Mrs. "I think all the dogs in the world saw him," said Prince, "and if I'll understand him rightly, we should all get to our beds instantly. At any moment the doors will close and refuse to open for us." Pongo nodded. "Every dog to his bed," he commanded. The dogs who slept in the stables converted into kennels went as fast as they could, and Pongo noticed that they ran. Now, they didn't swoosh. The magic was fading. "Now upstairs, quickly," he told Mrs. "Do just let me hear where Roly's been," said Mrs. Roly-Poly was one of the dogs who slept in the kitchen. He was on his way there now, but he turned back. "Oh, I just went to Paris," he said, trying to sound casual. "You couldn't have," said Mrs. "Surely Paris was in France, across the sea?" "Oh, Pongo, I must hear about this." They were in the hall now. Pongo said to Prince, "You and Perdita run upstairs and stop the bedroom door from closing, and bark if it tries to." "Now Roly-Poly said, "It was George. He's always wanted to go abroad. The foreign secretary, I mean the human one, is always going. But he can't take George because of the quarantine laws. So after I taught him to swim this morning, he thought we might both risk swooshing across the channel. And we did it quite easily. We didn't even get our feet wet, and then we swooshed to Paris, and it was wonderful. We had lots of fun. Then we were told to look at the sky at midnight, and we saw Sirius, on top of the Eiffel Tower, and he noticed us. He knew we were English dogs, and he said we could have a little extra swooshing power, to get us home in time. That's how I managed to catch up with you. Did you like Paris better than London? Asked Mrs. You can talk about that tomorrow, said Pongo. From upstairs Prince called. This door is beginning to feel restive. Upstairs instantly, Pongo told Mrs., giving her a push. She went obediently but called back to Rolly. Did you get on well with the French dogs? Splendidly, said Rolly. And you should have seen George with the French lady dogs. Oh, la la. Pongo and Mrs. hurried into the Dearlys' bedroom. Now you can let the door have its way, said Pongo. The minute Prince and Perdita left the door, it very firmly closed, and all over Hell Hall doors could be heard closing. The kitchen door, the front door, the doors of all the kennels, and last of all, the tall iron gates clanged together. How well and peaceful the dear Dearlys look, said Mrs., getting into her much-loved basket. Won't they be surprised when they wake up and find out they've missed a whole day? I don't think they will find out, said Pongo. And I don't think they, or any humans, will ever know about this day we've lived through. And perhaps many dogs will forget it. Mrs. said she never would, and Perdita, now settling in her basket, said she wouldn't either. But perhaps we shall think of it as a dream, said Prince, as he too settled down, and in some ways it was like one, with so many things happening at once. Pongo, how was it that Sirius could talk to all the dogs in the world, in so many different places, all at the same time? Pongo shook his head. I just don't know. Oh, I do, said Mrs. brightly. In space there probably aren't any clocks, and where there are no clocks there's no such thing as time. But it's simpler to believe it was all done by magic. Magic's so easy to believe in. Yes indeed, said Perdita, though there's a new word for magic now. It's metaphysical. I'll explain that to you tomorrow, Perdita. Mrs. relaxed in her basket, then said in a surprised tone, I'm hungry. How nice. Now I can look forward to breakfast. Of course I haven't minded going without food today. I haven't missed it, but I do believe I've missed missing it. And I'll tell you something else. I think there would be a catch about that nice bliss. After a while, you wouldn't notice it. Oh, hello. The white cat had climbed in through the window. She said, it's like that night I climbed through your kitchen window in Regent's Park, after I ran away from Cruella de Vil. Whoa, dear, said Mrs. How dreadful it is to think that Cruella will soon be waking up. Pongo grinned. Well, at least we shall always hear her coming in those clanking clothes. Go to sleep, Mrs. dear. The white cat joined her husband and gave him a fairly hard push. She adored him, but that was no reason why he should have more than his fair share of their basket. He did not stir, and soon she too was asleep, and so were Mrs. and Prince and Perdita, and of course, the Dearlys. Only Pongo was still awake. He remembered how, only yesterday morning, he had lain here hankering for adventure. Well, he'd had the adventure, and he was very, very glad it was over. He couldn't imagine ever longing for another. How fortunate he was. He looked lovingly at the sleeping Dearlys, and suddenly he was frightened. Why hadn't they wakened? True, the dogs had talked in whispers, but early morning whispering usually woke the Dearlys, who always said, quiet, very firmly. Why were they so heavily asleep? Perhaps they weren't going to wake. Then Pongo noticed a marvelous sound. Outside, birds were twittering. Lots of birds. If the birds had woken up in the normal way, then so would the Dearlys. And then a shaft of early sunlight shone full on Mr. Dearly, who half opened his eyes, then turned over and slept again. All was well, Pongo told himself, gazing at the rising sun. Mr. Dearly, when walking around the garden under the stars, had said that Sirius, the dog star, rose with the sun, though one couldn't see stars in the daylight. Was Sirius there now? And could he still read the minds of dogs? Just in case, Pongo sent him a message. Perhaps one day, Sirius, we shall be ready to join you and accept bliss. But not yet. You see, we do have quite a lot of bliss already. And then Pongo, feeling as young and happy as a puppy, rolled over on his back and went to sleep with his 4 paws in the air. The end.